In the heart of the steppe, under the scorching sun, two armies clashed. Arrows darkened the sky, and as the hooves of horses pounded the earth, warriors fought to the death. At that very moment, Tomyris' cavalry flanked the Persian army from the rear. Cyrus' front lines were shattered, his formation in disarray. Like a steppe storm, the massagete struck from both flanks. The desperate Persian soldiers, weighed down by heavy armor, sank into the mud, trying to retreat under a hail of arrows. When Cyrus was surrounded on the battlefield, there was nowhere left for him to escape. In the mid-6th century BCE, the Central Asian steppes were silent but alert. The year was 530 BCE. During this dry and harsh season, the northern plains were covered in dust blown by the wind. To the southeast, the Persian Empire was rapidly expanding its borders, and Cyrus, one of the most powerful rulers of Western Asia, had set his sights on the lands of the Massagete east of the Aral Sea. The Persians aimed to seize this region, rich in fertile farmland, strategic waterways, and key trade routes. The Massagete were a formidable people who ruled the area around the Sir River. After the death of her husband, Queen Tomyris became their leader, determined to defend her people's independence. The Persian interest in these lands was not just a threat of territorial loss for the Massagete, it was a matter of honor. Cyrus's ambitions posed a direct danger to Tomyris' people, and this growing tension led to an inevitable war between the two nations. Cyrus's first move was not on the battlefield, but through diplomacy. He sent envoys to Tomyris, offering so-called peace proposals that were in fact meant to bring her under Persian influence. Tomyris wisely rejected the offer. To her, these lands were not just a home, but the legacy of her ancestors. She refused to accept chains hidden behind promises of peace. This refusal accelerated Persian preparations. Cyrus marched his army of tens of thousands eastward. In his eyes, this campaign was not a simple conquest, but the beginning of a process to subjugate the scattered peoples of the north. The Massagete lands were covered in open steppes, but their simplicity was deceptive. Lands split by rivers, valleys turning into marshes, and hills rising suddenly from vast plains could become deadly traps for a foreign army. Fighting here meant battling not only the enemy, but nature itself. The scorching sun by day and the sudden chills at night tested the endurance of every soldier. The spark that ignited the war was not a direct clash on the battlefield, but a scheme devised by the Persian king Cyrus. As the Persian army advanced toward Massagete territory, before crossing the Sir River, it targeted an advance unit led by Tomyris' son, Spargapises. Instead of launching a direct attack, Cyrus chose to weaken the enemy through deception. The Persians set up lavish banquet tables in a valley, creating the illusion of abandoned spoils, then pretended to retreat. These tables, laden with wine, meat, and bread, were an unusual sight for the Massagete, who had little tradition of heavy drinking. As the weary soldiers relaxed under the influence of wine, night fell, and the Persian army surrounded the camp in a silent ambush, slaughtering hundreds of warriors. The most striking outcome of the ambush was the capture of Spargapises alive. Although the Persians hoped to use this as a political advantage, Spargapises could not endure captivity and took his own life. Upon learning of her son's tragic fate, Tomyris was consumed by grief and fury. This tragedy radically changed the course of the war. It was no longer a border conflict, but a people's war ignited by a mother seeking vengeance for her son. Tomyris summoned all the tribes, and from every corner of the steppe, warriors gathered to form a mighty army. For the Massagete, this was not merely a military defeat. It was a national humiliation. The victory Cyrus had gained through deceit had deeply wounded their warrior honor. The suicide of Spargapises ignited a fire of rage and vengeance, not just in a mother's heart, but in the soul of an entire people. Tomyris sent Cyrus a letter filled with harsh words. Cyrus, insatiable for blood, now I will satisfy you. These were not just words of warning, but omens of the catastrophe to come. This war would no longer be fought for land alone. It would be for honor, justice, and retribution. Tomyris rallied all the tribes. Across the steppe, horses were being saddled, arrows sharpened, and the echoes of the coming clash rang through distant valleys. Tomyris sent messengers to summon the tribal leaders from all corners of the steppe. This was not merely a command, but a call to restore the honor of her people. The trap that had ensnared Spargapaces left a deep wound in the hearts of the Massagetæ. Soon, many tribes from east to west began to mobilize. Some crossed rivers, others navigated valleys, and others advanced along the misty forest edges to reach the vast plain where the camp was set up. Men and women warriors, elderly raiders with war tattoos on their faces, gathered with determined silence in their eyes. The camp grew larger each day, and banners fluttered in the wind. This army was now not only driven by revenge, but by the fury of a people sworn to settle the score for betrayal. The Massagetæ advanced from the east in the early hours of the morning, arriving at the vast steppe plain. Cavalry units were sent ahead as the vanguard. These horsemen stood out with their light armor and swift maneuverability. Behind them marched warriors typically clad in leather armor and felt helmets. Archers were positioned in the rear ranks, moving with their quivers and short bows. The command center was established near Queen Tomyris' tent. Scouts were stationed around the assembly area, remaining constantly alert against possible ambushes or surprise attacks. The Persian army approached systematically from the west. In accordance with imperial discipline, heavily armored infantry were placed at the front lines. Most of these units were equipped with long spears, large shields, and metal breastplates. Archers formed the rear lines. Commanders used signal banners and vocal orders to maintain coordination between units. Around the camp, temporary trenches and wooden barriers were constructed to ensure perimeter security. Both sides positioned themselves on terrain that best suited their strategies, aiming for tactical superiority. The Massagetæ sought to exploit their agility in the open field, while the Persians prepared to hold firm with their disciplined, defense-oriented formations. The plain now stood on the brink of an irreversible clash. The battle turned into a major battlefield on the western banks of the Cyridaria River. Tomyris' soldiers surrounded the area with their swift horses. With their light armor and long-range bows, they were constantly on the move against the heavily armored infantry of the Persians. Cyrus' army tried to advance with their classical battle formation on the open ground, but they proved ineffective against the Scythian tactics. The retreating Scythian units dragged the Persians towards the marshy areas. This terrain slowed down the heavily armored Persian soldiers. Meanwhile, Scythian archers held the high ground, watching every movement and disrupting the Persian units with precise shots. The most critical moment of the battle came when the Persians unexpectedly began to push against the Massagetæ defense line. Cyrus' army was superior in numbers and well organized. The Persians, with their archers and heavily armored units, began to push the Massagetæs back. However, Tomyris at this point made a clever move. Finding a weak spot, Tomyris unexpectedly took advantage of the vastness of the steppe and planned a flank attack. She secretly positioned part of her army on the flank, which the Persians initially saw as the weakest. In the heat of the battle, the Persians failed to notice this move. Tomyris exploited the speed of her cavalry and, at the most critical moment of the battle, surprised the enemy with the accuracy and speed of her attack. On one side, a direct pressure was applied to the center of the Persian forces, while on the other, hidden Massagetæ units infiltrated the Persian flanks, beginning to encircle them. Cyrus started losing his defensive line against these sudden maneuvers. In the end, the Persian army was forced to retreat against the resistance of the Massagetæs. With the disintegration of his forces, Cyrus slowly descended into collapse as he searched for an escape route. The battle lasted for hours. As the sun set to the west, Cyrus' army began to collapse. Tomyris' forces executed a flanking maneuver, cutting off the Persians' retreat path. At the peak of the clash, Cyrus realized there was no escape. Surrounded by Massagetæ cavalry on his horse, he had no guards or any way out. A unit, acting under Tomyris' command, broke Cyrus' final resistance. The great king fell, struck by a sword, in the middle of the steppe. When the battle ended, the steppe was enveloped in silence. As the Massagettes gathered their dead, the sun slowly rose over the blood-soaked earth. The Persian army had suffered a crushing defeat, with thousands of soldiers' corpses scattered across the steppe. The few surviving Persian soldiers retreated in a shattered formation. News of Cyrus's death spread rapidly. The most powerful ruler of Western Asia had perished in the middle of the steppe, on foreign soil. Tomyris found Cyrus's head on the battlefield. According to legend, she filled a golden wine vessel with blood and dipped Cyrus's severed head into it, saying, "You were never satisfied with blood while you were alive. Now drink your fill." This was not only the revenge of a mother, but a message to the world from a ruler who had sworn to protect the honor of her people. Tomyris's fury had subsided, but the grief still lingered in her heart. After the war, Tomyris gathered her people and set about restoring the disrupted order. The rhythm of nomadic life was re-established. Destroyed campsites were rebuilt, and the losses from the war were mourned. While mourning the dead, the youth began to learn how to fight in place of those who had fallen. Tomyris did not use this great victory as an occasion for pride. She focused on establishing an order where her people could live in peace. Borders were strengthened, scout units were sent to all corners of the steppe, and the safety of the people was ensured once again. This great victory also had a profound impact on the other nomadic communities surrounding the Massagettes. Tomyris's success was remembered not only as the defeat of a Persian king, but also as an example of what nomadic peoples could achieve when united. The Persian northern campaigns were halted for a long time. Strategies leading east and west were adopted instead. Thus, Tomyris became a figure who influenced not only her own people, but also the balance of the entire steppe world. Her name continued to live on in laments, epics, and folk tales. In the 6th century BC, Persian King Cyrus set his sights on Central Asia. His expansion dreams reached as far as the steppe lands inhabited by the Massagettes. However, he faced not just an ordinary tribe, but a determined leader like Tomyris. When Cyrus realized he could not defeat the Massagettes directly, he resorted to trickery. He captured Tomyris' son, Spartopyses. This loss caused great anger within the people. Tomyris swore vengeance and called the tribes to war. Warriors from all corners of the steppe gathered to form a great army. With Tomyris' plan, the Persian army was surrounded. Cyrus' soldiers scattered, the order broke down, and the war turned against them. At the height of the battle, Cyrus was left alone. As he tried to retreat, he was surrounded by Massagete cavalry. He made one last stand, but collapsed to the ground. The great king died on the steppe. Tomyris' victory became an epic story told throughout history. If this powerful tale moved you as well, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. See you again in New War Stories.